We are off and rolling here on a Tuesday. Welcome in, everybody. It's the Kinner and Kev Show, Dayton's ESPN Radio, 1410 Wing AM. I'm Justin Kinner. He's Kev Nash. Mr. Kev Nash, welcome.
What up, though?
Man, it's wild just getting here, doing no work all day and just showing up to do a radio show. It's amazing how that works.
I don't believe you.
It's amazing how that works, but nonetheless, off and rolling here on a Tuesday. Got a lot to get into. JJ Redick's press conference yesterday has everybody talking because, we all use the worst words in the world, but when we hear other people do it, we get all offended. We get all bothered, everyone's perfect until you find someone else's mistake. But JJ Redick's personality on full display yesterday. We'll open up with that coming up in a moment. The Reds get a big win last night. The Guardians continue to be one of the top teams in baseball. Transfer portal number updates. We didn't have time to get into that yesterday. We'll dive into that. What else do I have on my notes? We'll get into some NFL stuff coming up around the corner, but nothing too exciting today, except that we might have to mow our grass coming up here in the near future. Mother Nature decided to pour some rain on us.
Finally. So I'm not going to sit here and act like I was mad that I didn't have to cut the grass for the last 2 weeks. But we finally got some rain in the area. Hopefully my grass turns back green instead of, hay color. So that's a good thing. But we're supposed to get some more rain this evening and some more even tomorrow. So that's a good thing.
All right. Again, we're live on the iHeartRadio app, live on ESPN Dayton's YouTube channel, live on the Justin Kinner Show Facebook page, 1410 Wing AM on the dial, wingam.com. Plenty of places you could take in the show. We appreciate you hanging out with us here on a Tuesday. JJ Redick announces the new head coach yesterday for the Los Angeles Lakers. We touched on that yesterday, of course, before the press conference, but it's what he said during the press conference that has everybody all hot and bothered. I wish more coaches would take this approach that JJ Redick has. Now, it's easy to say it, but can he do it? That's going to be the other question. I've made sure I bleeped this out, by the way. There's not just one but two potential F words that can get us in trouble here, but I made sure to take them out. Here's JJ Redick being introduced during the press conference yesterday when he was asked about, is there any kind of perceptions out there that he wants to dispel? Because there's a lot of people out there that are like, oh, he has no coaching experience. He's just a podcast host, this, that, and the other. Take a listen.
It's a valid question. And I've certainly heard everything. It's been a really interesting 6 weeks or so, just in terms of, being part of the engagement farming industry. It's been really interesting. However, I don't really have a great answer for your question because I really don't give a honestly. I want to coach the Lakers. I want to coach the team. I don't want to dispel anything. I don't. I want to become a great coach in the NBA, and I want to win championships, and I want my players to maximize their careers. That's all I care about.
That's all he effing cares about. That was JJ Redick during the introductory press conference yesterday. And look, you could tell he was prepared to ask to be asked a lot of these questions. And the reason that I don't think that he was putting on a show yesterday is because there's nothing that he said yesterday that we basically have not seen him basically verbalize on display in some capacity, maybe not exactly those words, whether it just be his not stubbornness, but his reluctancy to bow down to the higher ups at ESPN. And I mean like the Stephen A. Smiths of the world and others where, oh man, that's Stephen A. Smith. We got to just fall in line with his opinions on things. He's always kind of been the pushback on that, mainly especially with Mad Dog Russo sitting next to him and this, that, and the other. He's always pushed back on, well, that's just how it is. And that's just how it is. Well, they're going to ask you tough questions. Well, I'm going to give you the answers I want. Well, they're not going to let you be a podcast host and be a coach. Well, I really don't give a damn. My job's to be if you want to focus on what I was doing before being a head coach, that's fine. I'm a head coach now. Let's talk about what I'm going to do moving forward. I do believe that type of personality, while everyone else tries to do coach speak and tell you the right things, this is a new day and age. And we're seeing it at the high school level. We're seeing it at the college level. And now we're starting to see it at the pro level, not just in the NBA, but the NFL across the board. A little bit of a coaching youth movement. These guys aren't young by any means, but they're definitely not like when I grew up. Every time you'd see a coach pacing on the sideline, all gray hairs. They're all older veteran guys that have been through the ringer, whether it be as a player, whether it be working up their way through the coaching, the ranks, whether it be an assistant coach, film, whatever. Guys are skipping the line now a little bit more, and they're a lot younger on the sideline, and they're learning as they go. To where back then, when you'd get a head coaching job, you were kind of not a finished product, but you had experienced enough and been on enough coaching staffs and learned from enough that you felt confident in your ability to be a head coach. That's not really the case now. Now your job is, well, to connect with the players, get the players in line. You already know the game. You know the X's and O's. Now go execute a game plan with your knowledge of the X's and O's. And, oh, yeah, get the players to buy in. That's the biggest thing that J.J. Redick has to do. But I love that press conference yesterday. People were, oh, man, wow, it's not like it used to be when coaches using this language. Oh, yeah, didn't we push coaches out from back in the day because of the language they used in practice and everything else? Now they're supposed to be buttoned up just because they're sitting in front of a mic. I mean, I had no problem with it, not even a little bit.
Not a big problem with it at all. But, coaches can talk however they want to as long as they get the results that, the fans and the team desires. I mean, we've seen plenty of nice coaches fired that use all the perfect cliches and tell everybody what they want to hear, but they didn't win enough. And then we saw fiery coaches get fired because they weren't winning enough games. They were speaking their mind. They weren't winning enough games. JJ can say whatever he wants to on that microphone, answer questions however he pleases. If he wins games, it's all good. If he doesn't win enough games and win a championship, then it's not going to be all good. It's as simple as that. You can talk how you want to talk, but ultimately you are coaching the Lakers, and the Lakers are not here to play for the Western Conference title. They're not here to play for whatever division they are in the Western Conference. They're not here for none of that. They're not really even here for in-season tournament championships. They're here for world championships. They're here for Larry O'Brien. So you win some Larry O'Briens, then it's all good. You don't, then you're going to get fired just like the rest of them.
And that's fine. But if the Lakers continue to make mediocre offseason moves, that's not a J.J. Redick problem, although he might be the scapegoat like Darvin Ham was and like every other head coach is. But if the Lakers truly are about world championships and winning championships, not in tournament championships, what the decisions they make moving forward now are going to be very important. Yes, the J.J. Redick hire, very, very important. I think that's actually a solid hire considering the circumstances. Excuse me.
Emotional about JJ,
but
you're Dookie.
But no, but everyone, because I'm listening all day to everyone, it's very similar. Well, he has to win championships. Well, hold on, you got to look at the front office and say, are you going to give them more? Because I was making the argument before during the NBA Finals. All the talk was about who the Lakers' next head coach was going to be during the NBA Finals. I'm like, you're watching two teams in the championship that we clearly don't care about because all everyone's talking about is the coaching search for a team that whoever is going to be leading them is going to be coaching them in the play-in tournament next year. That's basically what this comes down to. This is not a championship roster, although there may be a move, maybe two away from being that, but they're close. But J.J. Redick was never going to be the missing piece to get them over the hump. It's not like this year, man, they were good, but if they had J.J. Redick, they would have won the NBA championship this year. I don't think that's the case. But again, when he's aggressive with media, he's not going to make friends. The one reason coaches do try to play nice with media is hopefully they expect some kind of return that if things aren't going well, that you're going to protect them. JJ, I don't think really cares about that.
Oh, no, he definitely doesn't care about it. I mean, you can go back to his playing days at Duke. Earlier in his career when he finally started getting some playing time with the Orlando Magic, and when he really had his star blossom with the Clippers, he's a trash talker. He woofs to the crowd, woofs to his opponents and everything like that. He's bringing that same personality, and I want him to do that. I like people that are genuinely themselves at 100% of the time, but we'll be silly not to think that, Lakers Nation, I believe that's what they call themselves. They're not expecting championships. I mean, when you have, whomever the coach, whether it was Mike Brown, they were winning championships. When it was Luke Walton, they were winning championships. When Phil Jackson was there on his first time and second time, they won the championships. If you was a coach, they would win championships. If, Coach Sargent was there, they would win championships. They would expect championships. They expect more championships out of the players. They will expect more championships out of the organization. So, we all know who the fall guy is going to be if they don't win championships. It's not going to be a Jeannie Buss. She's not going to sell the team. Oh, I did a bad job. Let me sell the team. No. Oh, hey, man. Sorry, JJ, you're fired because I didn't get you enough players. Sorry, you're fired. It's your fault. Just like Darvin Ham.
Oh, I mean, and look, we do this in all sports too. I mean, but when we like the coaches, I'm not saying you don't like JJ, but with Ryan Day, we'll make every excuse in the book. Well, the athletics director didn't do this, or they didn't give him NIL. They didn't do this, that, the other. Well, it's not all on that. So JJ, again, not going to be very liked. So he's not going to be given the benefit of the doubt as far as that's concerned. But what did he call it? Not the content game, but the content farming or whatever. That's a direct shot at the First Takes and the all the other shows on ESPN and everything else, where it's the content farming basically of we're going to basically mess stuff up, make it messy just to get people to talk about it. And his experience there, I think that's why, because he worked in the heart of all that stuff, I do think that's why he'll also do a good job, because I don't think that stuff's going to rattle him. He knows how it works. He knows what they're looking for. He knows that everything he says does outside of winning will be used against him. And that's really just the reality of it.
Yeah, I think that,
engagement farming,
people that think like, oh man, they should have hired this coach or hired that coach, or he doesn't have experience. At some point, we just got to say, we just don't know. We just don't know, man. We have no idea. We have no idea what's going to make a good NBA coach, because they have picked guys that have had the most experience out there and they have flamed out. They have picked guys that have come from the front office in GM roles and won championships, guys that have come from, calling games, talking heads, and they worked out. Like, they've got guys from overseas and got teams to the NBA finals. Man, we have no idea who's the perfect candidate. We could think we're a perfect candidate. I love the fact that the Cavs got Atkinson. I was like, oh, I like that. I think that's a good move. Emphasis on I think. I have absolutely no idea, because we just don't know who's going to be a good head coach. Like Malone from the Nuggets, like, is he really a good coach, or he got the best player in the league? I have no idea.
Why is that changed, though? Because when I grew up, the 90s and the 2000s, I mean, you look at the MJ dynasty that started in the 90s. I mean, you had Pippen and Jordan for a bit, but it was that missing piece was, okay, they needed to get that Phil Jackson in there to, like, that's the big difference in the game today. We could talk about the scoring. We could talk about just the increase in skill set, this, that, and the other. But like, coaches used to matter. And I'm not saying coaches don't matter now, but they don't matter to me as much as they used to, because I don't know the last time that we sat back and said, oh man, this team is a coach away from winning a championship. And I'm sure there are examples, but there were literal examples that were very evident back in the 90s and the early 2000s. I don't think that's the case now. I mean, when the Lakers had Rudy Tomjanovich and they were trying random head coaches, Kobe had to plead with Phil Jackson to come back, and the Lakers front office had to plead with Phil Jackson to come back to lead that second dynasty of the 2000s with Pau Gasol, Lamar Odom, and those guys. It was like, that was like the last time I remember like a coaching change desperately being needed to go on that particular run. I mean, you look at these LeBron dynasties. I mean, Spoelstra is a name now. At the time, Spoelstra was still learning. He was still learning how to be a championship head coach. It didn't matter how many times he filmed practice for Pat Riley and all that stuff growing up. So I say all of that to, like, you see all these teams and these guys like Steve Kerr, first-year head coach, leads a team to a finals. You saw it with David Blatt when he was there for the 1 year for the Cavaliers. They get to the finals. Not saying coaching doesn't matter, but to sit there and to try to convince me that coaching is as important today as what it was back then, I just don't really see that to be the case. So the JJ thing, everyone's up in arms about it because it's the Lakers. It's kind of wild. If he takes the Pistons job or any other job, I don't think people are as pissed off about it, right? Because it's the Los Angeles Lakers.
Right.
I think that's what it is. But do you agree? Like, what's different now about today's game? These coaches matter, but look, we've seen what the Bucks win a championship, they move on from their head coach. Like they like, usually you win a championship with the team you've bought in the league. Basketball, I think, is the worst at that. Do you agree? You win a championship, that doesn't buy you anything, really. You could be fired a year later.
I'm not sure. Maybe baseball. No, hockey. Hockey is.
I don't follow hockey enough.
Hockey is the worst. Hockey will fire a dude at the drop of a dime. Yeah. But no, I think coaching still matters. I think it's about the same. I just think the lights are on it brighter now. I mean, you go back to the 90s and stuff like that. You think about the names that stood out. You talk about the Fields. You talk about the Pat Rileys. You talk about right now about the names that stand out. Like, you think like, okay, if I get this coach on my team, I know I'm going to win more games. Like, if you got Tibbs from the Knicks and put him on any team in the NBA, you're going to win at least 10 more games. Now, are you guys going to break down? Potentially. But are you going to win more games? Absolutely. He is a guy that's going to get you more wins. Look what he did with the Bulls. Look what he did with the T-Wolves. Look what he's doing with the Knicks now. I think there's certain guys, just like it was certain guys back in the 80s and 90s and early 2000s. You talk about the guys that actually won. What about the guys that didn't? There's so many more that didn't, that are just rotating in and out. And I think it's the exact same way. If you look at Spo has gotten 2 teams to the NBA finals without, a all-time great player on their team. Like, as much as I'm a Jimmy Butler fan, I'm not a fool and say like, oh man, Jimmy Butler's top 100 players ever to play in the NBA. He's not. He's very good. I like the way he plays. I like the energy, but like, a lot of that has to do with Spo. I'm trying to think like of other NBA coaches right now that like, oh man, he's a game changer. Maybe Rick Carlisle. Rick Carlisle obviously is a champion with the Dallas Mavericks. Got the Pacers to the Eastern Conference Finals this year. I think he's a game changer. I would like to see him implement some type of defensive strategy of this upcoming season, but like I think he's a game changer. I just think that, you know, there's not a lot of game changers, and I think that's what makes these coaches unique, because you have to have a coach. There's not going to be 30 elite coaches. That's just impossible. Just like there's not going to be, you know, every team's not going to have 2 superstars. Just like every team doesn't even have a superstar. There's just guys, and sometimes you just got a guy as a head coach.
I also think too, I mean, when we talk about like LeBron being a coach killer, we label, you know, KD a coach killer. We label all these athletes coach killers. Well, the only athletes that aren't being labeled coach killers are the guys that are playing in dynasties on the current team that they've been with their whole time. Like, of course, really, Steph Curry's never been labeled that. He's been only played for 2 coaches during his time in the NBA. I think just 2, right? Is Mark Jackson right off the bat?
I think it's 3.
Was it? So Steve Kerr replaced Mark Jackson.
Yeah.
So Mark Jackson took over for, but either way, but that was like young. So
right.
on him. But the other thing too, the players have more power today than they did back in the 90s too.
Yes, absolutely.
So Michael Jordan was more open to being coached. I think these athletes today, I'm not saying that they're not open to being coached, but they're not being coached the same way that they were back in the 90s, where to me, coaches mattered more then, because coaches could actually implement what they wanted with their team. Right now, it's a lot of, I just don't think
I know more than the coach.
Yeah, I just don't think that coaches are winning that war of the voice in the huddle when you're dealing with star players now, because these guys make so damn much. Like, and the coaches even know, and the athletes know, hey, this guy doesn't have leverage in this situation, like at the end of the day. But nonetheless, Kenner and Cav, 1410 ESPN Radio. We got the NBA draft coming up tomorrow night. Of course, wasn't too long ago we had Deron Holmes, who spent the day with us here on the Kenner and Kev show. We talked about, his preparation for the draft coming up. Well, tomorrow we could potentially, I think we are going to hear his name night 1 of the NBA draft, of course, because he's been invited to New York.
Wow.
That's pretty exciting. So we'll talk a little NBA draft coming up here around the corner, and the perception of the Dayton Flyers, who again continuing to put guys in the NBA. Question I have, and again, we're talking about coaches. This isn't my anti-coaching segment coming up, but which era, Dayton Flyers fans, do you prefer? Did you prefer the era of no NBA guys that came with deep runs in the NCAA tournament, or is this era been more enjoyable for you, where especially on draft night when you have your Kostas Antetokounmpo and your Tumani Kamaras and your Obi Toppins and now your Deron Holmes? Which era has been more enjoyable for you as fans? We'll talk about that when we come back. It's Kenner and Kev Show, Dayton's ESPN Radio, 1410 Wing AM. right, and we are back. Justin Kinner, Kev Nash, Dayton's ESPN Radio, 1410 Wing AM.
Hello.
Happy Tuesday. All right, NBA draft coming up tomorrow night, and in one of the wilder buildups to a Dayton Flyer being drafted, like with Tumani Kamara, we never anticipated him being a first-round draft pick. We knew he would be a second-round draft pick, so it was just kind of sit back, wait for the second round to get there, and hear his name. Obi, we knew he'd be roughly a top 10 to top 15 pick. That was one of those interesting drafts where that was coming off of the canceled 2020 NCAA tournament and all this, and it was a magical regular season for the Flyers, but we knew what to expect there. Obviously, you go back and you look at Kostas Antetokounmpo. No one really, that was one of those where you would be shocked if you did hear his name, and you heard his name with the very last pick of that draft that he was in. But Kostas Antetokounmpo,
Mr. Irrelevant.
Yeah, basically. I mean, he won a championship.
Hey.
He was on that Lakers roster that won the bubble ring. So,
Ring me.
NBA champion, developed here. So, there you go, right? That's what they say. That's right. All the teams, they were developed here. I mean, but NBA champion nonetheless. But so you had Kostas Antetokounmpo. You get to hear his name, University of Dayton, all this stuff, draft night. Same thing with Tumani Kamara, same thing with Obi Toppin. And Obi Toppin has had one hell of an NBA career. And now we wait for tomorrow night to see what is going to happen with Deron Holmes, because it went from not really knowing, last year, obviously falling in that late second round. It was a gamble. If you leave and you go to the draft and then you don't get drafted, now you're having to really work your way up. And even getting drafted late in the second round, you're still having to go through a lot to work your way up. But nothing was guaranteed to him last year. I think it was smart of him to come back. He obviously, put some muscle on. He even with still being a very thin big man out there. I mean, he put a lot of mass on from one year to the next. He worked on a lot of the things that they told him to. I know obviously he improved on his 3 game. I don't think it was he's not an elite 3-point shooter nonetheless, but you could see that he's willing to put that work in. I've seen 2 of the biggest turnarounds in players, or the biggest turnaround I think I've ever seen in a player was Obi Toppin from that 19 season to 20, when they went and told him everything that he needed to work on. And he didn't just work on it, he mastered all of it, and he became great at it all, and it turned into him being a top 10 draft pick. So, and then you look at Deron Holmes, did he excel at the 3-point shot the way that Obi did? And those guys, no, didn't really have to. I mean, if anything, people wanted him down on the block more. They wanted him running the floor more. They wanted him getting more shots in the paint and not just in the half court, but is super athletic. We joked the other day about, you go from a mid second round, late second round pick to now being promised a spot and getting, invited to the green room for night 1 of the NBA draft, because there's reports out there that a team has potentially promised him that he'd be drafted, that he's going to be their guy in the first round. It is interesting. I will say this: the guys that have had the most success being drafted right off the bat are not the 18 and 19-year-olds. It's the guys that have been around in college basketball for a minute. I feel like this is one of those drafts where, if it's not that great of a draft and you don't have those elite 18-year-old prospects, those one-and-done guys, this is where you start to lean into those 3, 4, 5-year guys that are going to come in, that are going to have that body already ready to go. Obviously, still with to add on to improve. But I think Deron Holmes is a perfect draft pick for this kind of draft because he's played college basketball for so long. Obviously, getting that tournament experience, he went up against big teams over the years, but obviously getting to go up against Arizona the way he did. So I think that Deron is going to be a hell of a draft pick no matter who he goes to. But I will say, he goes to a team like Denver, I think that's going to put him in position to succeed the most, because the higher you get drafted, the more you're expected to help build that team's nucleus or whatever. Now that nucleus is set. If it is Denver, now he just gets to be in and be a role player and contribute coming off the bench, this, that, and the other. I think that could be the best case. Now, I'm curious your thoughts. Tumani Kamara, completely opposite. He's part of that big trade. He ends up going to Portland. But then he gets all these minutes. He plays on a horrible team. He's getting all these minutes, all these double-digit scoring games, double-digit rebounding games. What's a better scenario, to go to a bad team like Portland and get all the minutes in the world, or is it to go to a team like Denver where you're going to get meaningful minutes on a meaningful team in meaningful games? Which is a better scenario, the Tumani Kamara route, or potentially what we could see if Deron Holmes does, let's just say, get drafted by Denver tomorrow night?
To play with the best player in the league. And specifically this best player in the league being Joker, who gets everybody involved, who gets passes the ball into your sweet spot, your pocket shot. There's a difference between passing somebody the ball and getting it to them in their shooting form or ability to finish. You look at Aaron Gordon when he was with the Orlando Magic. He was a good player. You know what I'm saying? He's going out there getting like 15 to 10. He's getting 15 to 10 for the Nuggets, and those are far more impactful plays for the Denver Nuggets because of where he's getting those points, his efficiency. His shooting percentage is skyrocketed. He's not taking threes now. He's not putting the ball on the ground. He's playing a specific role for that team, and he's highlighting his abilities to the best. When you get a chance to play for a bad team, you end up putting up crazy numbers. So like a guy that I follow when he was in college, Michael Carter Williams, Syracuse point guard, he went to Philadelphia during the basically them trying to tank era, the process era. He won Rookie of the Year simply because he was the best player on that team, and they just said, here's the ball, do whatever you want to do. So that created horrible habits for him. He was shooting probably like 20% from three, and it was like, yeah, I'm a 3-point shooter. No, you're not. There's just nobody else on the team that can handle the ball, that can do half the things that you can do. He won Rookie of the Year and then was basically bouncing around the league. He went to Milwaukee, he went to Orlando Magic, went overseas, trying to make his way back into the league. So I think playing with a quality team, especially a quality team like, the Denver Nuggets, would be a way better situation than to go to somebody that's actively trying to lose basketball games where you're out there developing bad habits.
How much did you watch Tumani last? Again, he played West Coast, so it's not like
I had the league
pass. No Dame time. So
exactly. But the funny part about it is you have YouTube TV, so when you hit add to my library, it adds all their games whenever they play. If it's on, NBA TV or they're on NBC or whomever, ESPN is going to add all their games. They didn't have a lot of those games, by the way, but it was still on my DVR situation because of, Dame playing for them. But I had League Pass for the first half of the season. So, on those random Saturday, Friday nights when I'm just at the house, I, flipping through, let me see what's going on in this game, drop in and drop out type of vibe.
Yeah. And so like with that, so Tumani, and not saying that he's screwed because that, but everything you just laid out, like that was basically him on a bad team. He's getting a lot of he's getting up and down. He's getting a lot of exposure. He's getting a lot of minutes out there and reps, this, that, and the other. But winning habits, how much of those did you pick up? I think that's one reason why Obi has become such. And look, this is like, I don't think Tumani's going to become a bad player because he played at Portland. But who is Tumani Kamara? Like, what is his role? The one thing about Obi Toppin, we knew right off the bat, his role in New York is actually, his role with the Pacers is still very similar to what we saw with New York. That's a great thing. People wanted his role to expand more with the Pacers. And I said, well, if you could be that guy everywhere you go, you have an identity.
Yeah.
I don't know what Tumani Kamara's identity is as a player. So therefore he's more of an interesting one that I think we need to see and he's only been in the league 1 year. But like, who Obi Toppin is, he's about to get paid too. I think it's almost payday for him.
About to get a nice check.
Yeah. Those NILs are going to be, hey, Obi, remember you started here, but yeah, like, I think that's great for Obi because now he has that, who he is. You know what you get with Obi Toppin. Is there still room to grow? Absolutely. But you know what you're getting. You don't know what you get with Tumani Kamara. So yes, if you are a Flyer fan, which a lot of you are that listen to the show, of course, Denver is that ideal spot because there was a lot of concern too when he got last year when Tumani got drafted by the Suns. Oh man, that's great. Gets to play with KD. How cool is that? But like, there's no minutes for him.
Right.
Well, almost sometimes that's not always a terrible thing as far as that's concerned. And that could be, I don't know Denver's roster like the back of my hand.
No, they're in desperate need. They're in desperate need of bench players. They got a good starting lineup, a great starting lineup, but they have zero bench. That's part of the reason that they lost to the T-Wolves. All those guys that were, good role players like Bruce Bowen, he went over to the Raptors in free agency. This upcoming season, KCP, he's up for free agency. The rumor is he's going to go to OKC. So imagine losing your best perimeter defender to the young and upcoming team. Like, that's a nightmare situation for the Denver Nuggets. So like, they need to reload that bench, that second unit. So getting young legs like Duran would be key for them.
So either way, that'll be a pretty cool spot. The brand of Denver, though, is not always the most appealing, but I will say any brand looks appealing when they're playing deep into May and June. And that's something that we're going to get to see, of course. Hopefully, we got to see it with Obi playing in the Eastern Conference Finals this year and could potentially, again, we're saying Denver because reports are saying and rumors are circulating that it's Denver. Again, I don't have the draft order in front of me. I don't know how much you've taken a look at that. What are some other teams that Duran makes sense for just based on his style of play? Obviously it's a crapshoot at this point, but he was like, he's not being invited to New York if there hasn't been some kind of not agreement, but at least some kind of message being sent to ESPN that, okay, this is our guy, right? Like, do you think that's the case?
Yeah, absolutely. It's the same thing in the NFL, but good fits for him would be the Suns would be a good fit. outside of Nurkic, they don't have any other big man. Their next big man is Kevin Durant. So they need somebody that can do big man things, and he can do that. So I would think him going back home to Phoenix would be a good landing spot for Duran. Also, no, I was gonna say the Rockets, but I don't think that's a good fit for him right now. Maybe even Memphis. He would obviously be in a bench role with the Grizzlies, but backing up Jaren Jackson Jr. But I think that would be a good fit for him. You already talked about the Nuggets. There's a log jam situation with the T-Wolves, log jam situation with the Cavs. I think those are my top three: the Nuggets, Suns, and who else did I say?
So the Nuggets, the Suns,
and Memphis. Yeah.
So with that being said, tomorrow night, again, NBA draft. We will not have the draft, unfortunately, because of we will have the draft tomorrow night. I'm sorry, Reds baseball plays during the day. So we will have the NBA draft coming up on ESPN Radio tomorrow night. So that's a good thing. So where will Duran Holmes end up? You can catch that right here on 1410 Wing AM tomorrow night. The Reds play tonight. Hunter Green on the mound. We do have an update. One of the Reds' best pitchers on the IL. Stop me if you've heard that one before. But I'm here to tell you why everyone's freaking out about this particular IL visit. I'm actually not concerned. Of all the reasons you can go to the IL, this one doesn't bother me that much, to be quite honest with you. And I'll tell you why coming up here around the corner. But NBA draft round 1 tomorrow night. Where will Duran Holmes end up? Obviously the Atlanta Hawks have the number 1 pick, with the Wizards picking number 2, the Rockets at 3, Spurs at 4. What's this how high can you see him going?
So I got the order.
Memphis is at 9, as you talked about.
No.
Utah's at 10.
I'm thinking somewhere
OKC
around
at 12.
I'm thinking somewhere. I think he's going to not fall, but I don't think he's going to end up in the lottery. I think he's going to fall anywhere between 15 and 25.
Some mock drafts have Milwaukee.
Yes, I was just looking at that because they're putting Bobby Portis on the market for trade.
Man, that's a
good pickup for somebody. Somebody's going to get a good player in Bobby Portis, but they got to revamp the roster and get younger at certain spots. And, with salary cap situations, you got to get rid of money.
Duran, too, with that 7-foot wingspan. You got Giannis out there on that floor with that 8-foot wingspan. I think it's 9 foot. What's his wingspan? Isn't it something crazy?
A mile.
That's a lot of length on the floor as far as that's concerned. But Denver at number 28 with Utah at 29 and the Boston Celtics at number 30.
Don't sleep. Don't sleep.
Veteran players like Duran, veteran teams usually like veteran players, guys that they could bring in. Sometimes the younger teams are like, well, we have time to develop him. We have time to, Duran will still need to be developed, but he's coming in a lot further along in the process. But I'm real curious to see where Duran Holmes ends up. NBA draft tomorrow night, and we'll have the first round right here on 1410.
And the thing about it
Radio.
is, you're getting obviously not a finished product, but you're getting a more developed player. But the reason you're taking these young, unknown commodities, they're more of a raw clay to like, hey man, his potential may be next level. So hey man, years 1, 2, and 3. So like if we come out in the same draft, you know what I'm saying? I'm 3 years older than you. Years 1, 2, and 3, I'm way better than you. I'm producing, but then boom, year 4, like you just take off. Like we saw with Tracy McGrady. Like Tracy McGrady, first year just sat there and watched. Second year got a little bit of playing time. Third year, hey man, he's in the rotation scoring. The next season, he's a free agent, goes to Orlando Magic, 32 points a game.
He came out of high school.
Straight out of high school.
Was he a high draft pick?
Yeah, I believe T-Mac went 11, if I'm not mistaken.
I always forget because that was obviously more common back then because, well, you could come out of high school.
Yeah.
I was trying to blank. Was it Sebastian Telfair? Was he the last high schooler? He was a high schooler, right?
Yes.
So was that the last high school, straight from high school to the pro pick? I want to say it was. But he was a bust, right? Like he didn't work out at all. Wasn't there a lot of buzz around him? I mean, he played for a little. Was he drafted by the Celtics?
No, he was drafted by,
the Bucks?
I was going to say, the Trailblazers.
If I just keep throwing it out there, I'll get one of the teams right. I have a 1 in 30 whatever shot.
Tracy McGrady went 9 to the Raptors. Tim Duncan, number 1. Keith Van Horn, 2. Shouts out to Keith Van Horn. I wonder what he's up to. Chauncey Billups at 3. Antonio Daniels from Columbus, Ohio. Bowling Green Falcon went number 4. Tony Battie at 5 went to the Nuggets. Ron Mercer went to the Celtics. I remember that. Tim Thomas, Villanova, went to the Nets. Adonal Foyle, he went to the Warriors. And then T-Mac went number 9. Danny Fortson from UC went to the Bucks.
sometimes fun to go back and dissect some of those old drafts as far as that's concerned. But nonetheless, all right, we're gonna look that up. The last, and if people know this in the chat, let us know. The last
I want to say
high school player to
say
be
it was
drafted
the Dwight Howard draft.
was Bynum a high schooler? Andrew Bynum.
Yes.
So I think, but I don't think he was the last one. We'll take a look at that. We'll have that coming up for you on the other side when we come back. It's the Kenner and Kev Show, Dayton's ESPN Radio, 1410 Wing AM. Jordan Earhart on YouTube. Jordan, hope you're doing well, sir. He says Paul George coming back to Indiana. Some of those reports started circulating today.
I'm coming home,
But
even though he went home because he's originally from LA.
He was working out with Steph today too. He was even wearing a Warrior shirt today too. I don't know if you saw that way.
Yeah, man. Rumors are flying. It is rumor season.
This is this is back when the NBA. This usually was the biggest part of the NBA season. Was the right here the initial build to free agency. Nonetheless, it's the Kenner and Kev Show, 1410 ESPN Radio. We will be right back. Justin Kinner, Kev Nash back with you here on a Tuesday. The Kinner and Kev Show, Dayton's ESPN Radio, 1410 Wing AM. NBA draft tomorrow night. Deron Holmes. We'll sit back and wait to hear his name be called on draft night, night one, of course, and we'll have night one of the draft right here on 1410 ESPN Radio, so keep that in mind. I'm excited about that. So we were talking a little bit ago, I just remember back in the day, like growing up, the number one sports debate when it came to basketball was should high schoolers be able to go to the, straight to the NBA? Then it was, then that got fixed. Everyone hated that, right? Oh, it's making the product worse. All right, well, we'll limit the one and dones. Or we'll just go to we'll get rid of that, and then the one and done happen. And then the same people that hated the high schoolers jumping right to the pros, now we're even more pissed because the one and done actually ruined the college game. To me, I'd rather have the high schoolers jump straight to the pros than lead to the one and done stuff that you see in college. I'm not saying that totally would eliminate it, but I just remember that always being the number one talking point. But I guess 41 high schoolers have been drafted in the history of the NBA. I think that number would be higher.
No, I think
is that a high number, low number?
I don't think that.
Right?
I think that's about right.
Okay.
There was such a period that guys didn't get drafted or didn't even try. I believe the guy in my era that did that was Sean Kemp. Sean Kemp he's from Indiana, and he went to like JUCO for like a cup of coffee and then decided to come to the NBA. Before that, I can't remember the last guy that made the jump before that. And then obviously the Kevin Garnett in 95, and then you got Kobe in 96, and then that's kind of like when the floodgates happened.
And like you started to see, from that 95 to 98 range, that was like the peak where when the high schoolers were coming in, they were very, very good. You look at Kevin Garnett in 95, and then in 96, you had Kobe Bryant and Jermaine O'Neal. Jermaine O'Neal is a very good player.
Mm-hmm.
If that Malice at the Palace thing doesn't happen, we're probably talking about him. And I don't know if he ended up going on to win a championship at the back end of his career. But as far as like him being the lead guy, he would have been the best player on a championship team on those Reggie Miller teams, right? Would you consider him the best player on that team?
Yeah, the year that they could have won it, yes, absolutely.
With the when the Malice at the Palace thing went down, but Jermaine O'Neal was
that
drafted.
team was loaded.
Oh yeah,
Ron Artest, Steven Jackson, Reggie Miller,
just Scott Pollard's coming off the bench and all that
team
stuff.
was loaded.
But yeah, so Kobe Bryant, Jermaine O'Neal in 96, and then McGrady in 97.
So start from 95, and we can go through this and figure out, like, I want you to continue doing what you're doing, but I'm gonna tell you like a quick synopsis, like Hall of Fame, All-Star, and like, so for people that think like, oh man, that was such a bad thing, think about what some of these players have done to the league.
Well, keep in mind too, they went 20 years between high schoolers coming into the league, because the last one, it was Bill Willoughby and Daryl Dawkins. That was in 75, and then it was 20 years. And then did a rule change happen?
No, you were always allowed. That just nobody did.
Okay.
So like the Sean Kemp thing, he doesn't count because technically it was a year after he graduated from high school, but he never played in college.
Okay. So in 95 is when the floodgates opened, and it wasn't just that names started popping in. These were big time names, and that's what you're going to allude to right here. But so in 95, the only high schooler that made the jump was Kevin Garnett,
Hall of Famer.
In 96, as we talked about, there was two: Kobe Bryant, Jermaine O'Neal,
Hall of Famer, All-Star.
Tracy McGrady in 97,
Hall of Famer.
And then in 98, these are two of these three ended up being really good. So Corleone Young, drafted by the Pistons. I don't know that name.
I remember the name.
Okay.
I remember the name. Didn't pan out.
So in a second rounder, so Rashard Lewis was really good.
Sniper.
Loved Rashard Lewis. Him and Ray Allen played together for the Supersonics for a bit. Then Rashard
made it
Lewis
to the finals.
Magic.
Yep.
And then Al Harrington, another really good.
Yep.
So and then 99, you go to Jonathan Bender and Leon
knees
Smith.
Exploded. And Jonathan Bender's knees exploded, which was terrible. Won a dunk contest. I remember that.
And 2000, my guy Darius Miles. And Deshaun Stevenson. That's a name that I forgot.
NBA champion.
He played for the Mavericks for quite some time, didn't he?
Yep. Won the chip with the Mavs.
Probably the most famous, and you can't call him a bust. He's a bust because he was number one overall pick. But Kwame Brown.
Probably, I won't say the most popular number one pick, but like, you think about like number one picks and everybody talks about bust, but he played in the league for 9 years. No, 12 years. 12 years in the NBA.
That's a very just so we're clear, that's a very good NBA career, by the way.
Yes.
He just, because he was picked number one overall. It's kind of like we talk in the NFL. It's kind of like that Baker Mayfield thing. Baker could go on to be a quarterback for 10, 12 years, and everyone will still look at him kind of sideways a bit because he was a number 1 overall pick, and he's just been okay. And I'm not putting him in that category with Kwame, but if Kwame gets drafted 15 or later in the first round, everyone's saying it's just a good pro career. Wasn't great, wasn't elite, just good. It's hard to have a sustainable career in the NBA. Man, I forgot about all these guys. I remember these guys. So Tyson Chandler and Eddie Curry, both Bulls.
Yeah. Played for the Bulls. Obviously, Tyson Chandler, Defensive Player of the Year, and won himself an NBA championship with the Mavs. Eddie Curry, things really didn't work out so well for him. But I mean, shoot, Tyson Chandler, I mean, he's decorated in this league. I mean, he's an assistant coach now with the Mavs. So yeah.
Eddie Curry was on those Bulls team with when Jay Will came out, right? Jay Will, I mean, but like I think he was on that Bulls team that led to that draft pick, if I'm not mistaken.
You're probably right.
But either way, and then Desanya Jop.
Yeah, Cavs. I remember that. That didn't pan out.
No, he's a big dude. It just did not. And then Usamane Cisse, and I don't know that Denver Nuggets.
I don't even know if he played.
Okay, all right. And then 2002, Amari Stoudemire,
All-Star, big time player.
Yeah, I mean. Hell, I mean, he was one of those big contracts with the Knicks. I mean, you know, every once in a while the Knicks get that player that they think this is going to be the guy, and then his just knees and everything else.
Think about his days with the Suns, you know what I'm saying, when small ball really started to take off in the NBA. Him and Steve Nash, that pick and roll was unstoppable. They had the Spurs dead to rights, and then Steve Nash got fouled. Then the benches cleared. Amari got suspended for a game, and then they ultimately got to a game 7 with the Spurs, and Spurs won that game. So, yeah, I mean, they were right there on the cusp.
And keep in mind, Shaq was on that Suns team. And Shaq, they could have potentially won a championship that year. And Shaq would have won another ring. That would have been the most random ring of all his, like, runs. But, like, everyone thought he was so bad in Phoenix. He wasn't bad in Phoenix. He was exactly what he needed to be in Phoenix. But that was a wild run. Okay, we'll go through this a little. So, obviously, LeBron James in 2003. Who? Yeah, you know.
Wow, what a bum.
But there was a lot.
He should have went to college, man.
1, 2, 3, 4. There were 5 high schoolers to come out in that 2003 draft. LeBron, Travis Outlaw, Ndubi, Ebi, Kendrick Perkins.
Champion.
And then James Lang. I don't know James Lang.
Me neither. That's not ringing a bell for me.
So, and then in 2004, Dwight Howard, Sean Livingston. His leg shouldn't have been that way. Livingston.
Oh, man.
I'll never forget that.
Champion. He played for that. Happened when he was with the Clippers, when his knee just went the total wrong way. Ultimately, turned into a role player. Won some championships with the Golden State Warriors. Obviously, Dwight Howard, one of the best defensive players ever to play in NBA history. Got himself a championship with the Lakers during the bubble. Outstanding career. I mean, he went to the finals with the Orlando Magic.
Jordan Earhart, by the way, said that Pacers team was set up. That one more time a little bit ago. He said Reggie's last best chance died that night in Detroit. We watched that documentary.
Yep.
That's one thing they talk about, too, is that they feel gutted to this day because they felt like that was the team to get Reggie his ring. Jordan also said, how many years was Odin at Ohio State? One and done.
Uno.
He was a one and done. As far as that's concerned. John Overturf says Dwight Howard, 2004. I don't know what you were throwing that out in reference to, but yeah,
that's the year he came out of high school. Yeah.
Okay. And then we're getting, so so this is where like they started coming out in waves.
Yes.
And I'm amazed at the hit rate of some of these guys too. The idea that you had to stop the one and dones, or like, I just don't understand why they stopped it now that I'm looking back at this, because now that we've seen the careers of these guys play out, these guys were coming in and they were playing. I mean, I don't know what that one extra year of college actually would have done for a lot of these guys, to be quite honest with you. So you go to 2004. So Dwight Howard, Sean Livingston. I'm going to throw these names out and I'll let you react to them. But Dwight Howard, Sean Livingston, Robert Swift with Memphis. I remember him. I know he got drafted by the Sonics, but he went
had it.
Yeah. Sebastian Telfair.
Bassey.
Al Jefferson. All right.
All-star.
You had Josh Smith, by the way, J.R. Smith, and Darrell Wright. I mean, all these guys, they
long
played.
careers.
Yeah.
Long careers. Outside, I believe, Robert Swift and Bassey, all those guys played double-digit years in the league. I mean, you talk about a guy like Josh Smith and a J.R. Smith. I mean, you know, we know J.R. from, you know what I'm saying, his quote-unquote antics, but I mean, he's one heck of a basketball player. I mean, they let go of him very early on with the Hornets, and he became a 6th man of the year candidate playing with the Nuggets, and Melo and those guys obviously went to New York, got his star power back, went to the Cavs, and became a vital cog in the situation where they won an NBA championship with the Cavs. So JR, absolutely. I mean, it's is loaded. I mean, it's just loaded.
And then the last year that the high schoolers were eligible to declare for the NBA draft was 2005. And there was a lot in this. So you had Martell Webster, Andrew Bynum, NBA champion, Gerald Green, CJ Miles, Ricky Sanchez, Monte Ellis, and Lou Williams.
Yeah, 6-man Lou Will. Shouts out to Lemon Pepper Lou.
And then Andre Blatch, remember that name?
Yep.
And then the last high schooler to ever be drafted in the NBA back in 2005 was Amir Johnson.
All those dudes that you just mentioned, outside of Ricky Sanchez, all of them had long NBA careers. I mean, there was a point where Monte Ellis, they were thinking about trading Steph because Monte Ellis was balling at such a high rate. Obviously, Steph developed into Steph, and Monte kind of fell off. But I mean, he still was there, still was in the league, still doing his thing. So, like, I've always been a proponent of saying, like, people, oh man, the guys coming straight out of high school ruin the league. It's like, no, that's not true. If you got drafted, you had a long NBA career. Like, we just ran through all those guys. Most of those dudes that played at least 8 years in the league.
I think if you take the list of all the high schoolers that came out versus the list of the top 10 draft picks that were college, I'd say as many of the high schoolers had a successful hit rate as the college. I always, and this is on me again, being younger, growing up during this era, I thought it was a bad thing. High schoolers going straight to the pros. I was like, oh, I see why they're doing it initially. Now I'm looking at this list. It doesn't make any damn sense why they did it, outside of the fact that these were big time names that, no, because they don't care about college. That doesn't matter to them.
Right.
That doesn't matter to them. Someone said, so John Overturf on YouTube says Andrew Bogut. He wasn't a high schooler though.
No, Andrew Bogut wasn't in high school. He went to where did he go?
I feel like that
did he? I think he went to Utah. If I'm not mistaken, he was the number 1 pick. If I'm not mistaken.
So, but yeah, John Overturf says I think he's questioning whether he was or not. I don't remember where he went, but I remember that when he came out, it was a big deal when he was being drafted that year. As far as that's concerned, so. Nonetheless, but Kenner and Cap 1410 ESPN Radio. What did you find on him?
Yeah, he went to Utah. Yeah,
okay.
Went to Utah. Got drafted number 1 selected number 1 to the Bucks.
Oh, that's right. Because that's all right. Interesting. All right, Kenner and Cap 1410 ESPN Radio. We just went down that rabbit hole again,
and also NBA champion with the Warriors.
And yeah. That I forgot too. That was that first ring.
Yep.
Back in 16 or whatever it was, or 15, either way. Kenner and Cap 1410 ESPN Radio went down that rabbit hole. Let's go to the phones real quick. John and Dayton. John, sorry to make you hold. We had to go down that rabbit hole quick, but I know you had a comment regarding the Portland Trailblazers.
Oh, hey, y'all. So I've been a Blazers fan since about 89, 90, when I was about 5 or 6 years old. We passed on Michael Jordan in the 1984 draft. We took Sam Bowie. We passed on Kevin Durant in the 2007 draft. We took Greg Oden. But we have not historically drafted a lot of small forwards. So I got 2 questions. I would hope that we draft a small forward tomorrow because that's something that we really need. We need length and athleticism. But number 2, who is the highest drafted small forward in Blazers history?
Is that like a trivia question?
I was going to say somebody, but I know that's not it because he was drafted by the Sonics.
Do you know this answer, by the way?
I think I do, but I'm going to say this. I know it's wrong because Scottie Pippen was drafted by the Supersonics, so I know that's not right, but that's like my initial thought that I was going to say. So who was it?
Actually, you know what? That's the point. I don't know, and that's the point. That's it. But that also is my point to say. We've never had or drafted a bona fide small forward 6'9", 6'10", 6'11" guy. We've always drafted 1s, 2s, 4s, and 5s. So I'm hoping that this draft, we have the 7th and the 14th pick, and I'm hoping we do not take a center because we really don't need a center, but I hope that we draft some athletic small forwards. Thank you so much.
Appreciate you, man.
I wish I could have asked him about what they're going to do with Jeremy Grant.
Oh, yeah, because the Lakers are looking. Well, a lot of teams are looking at him. I saw the Dallas Mavericks are looking at him too. Didn't they have him? No, he's been there from the beginning, right?
Jeremy Grant was 2nd round pick out of Syracuse, went to Philly. During the process, he was much like Michael Carter Williams, the best player on the team. And hey, man, he just got the ball to do whatever he wanted to do. he did not develop bad habits like a Michael Carter Williams. He was said, you know what, I'm going to just try to dunk everything, which turned out very well for him. Turned into some good contracts, went to Detroit, and then I believe he got traded to the Portland Trail Blazers.
Kenner and Cab, 1410 ESPN Radio. But yeah, that's what I was asking. I wasn't asking if you knew the answer. I was asking him if he knew the answer and he was quizzing us, or if like he was. So I was like, yeah,
I would guess the last, Sheldon Sharp from, I believe he went to Kentucky. They drafted him. I'm not sure like how much playing time he got with Portland this past season. Like I said, I didn't watch them a ton, but you talk about a center. I mean, they got DeAndre Ayton from the Suns in that trade, but I mean,
you drafted Odin. So,
yeah,
but the small forward, I mean, that's technically Tumani Kamara, but you didn't draft him,
right?
So, as far as that's concerned, Brandon Roy, shooting forward though, so that don't really.
Brandon Roy,
or he? What was no? What
he was
a point guard, but like he was a big point guard.
Yeah.
And that's why his knees, too. Yep. That's why my knees feel great. I'm 5'7". My knees, no problem with my
Noticing
knees.
a theme here with basketball players.
Yeah.
Their knees explode.
So why y'all nerds make fun of me for being short. Just know my knees feel better than y'all's knees. I'm just saying. Just throwing that out there. Kenner and Cap, 1410 ESPN Radio, NBA Draft tomorrow night. Where will Deron Holmes end up? We're excited to see where his journey takes him in the National Basketball Association. Kenner and Cap, 1410 ESPN Radio. And we are back. Justin Kinner, Kev Nash, Dayton's ESPN Radio, 1410 Wing AM. We are Dayton's radio home for Cincinnati Reds baseball. Reds and Pirates in action, game 2 tonight. How about the Reds last night? They put out this horrible lineup. Everyone, Reed and the guys just blasting the lineup. David Bell just getting absolutely destroyed yesterday for this horrendous lineup. Guys making their debut in the bottom half. I mean, just a lot of guys that have just been putrid. They put 11 runs up. That's how this works.
1, 2, 3, 4,
Now, that's not a game plan. Like that's not, hoping that this works, but sometimes the Reds are at the mercy of
felt
it
it in his gut, man.
So David Bell, I've always been a big David Bell guy, but Reds back at it tonight. Game 2, Reds Pirates. I need this one. 2.5 games out of a wild card. The Cubs officially in last place in the Central, so that's the teeter-totter back and forth thing that's kind of going on there as far as that's concerned. But Hunter Green on the mound tonight. And Hunter Green, the big debate over the last couple of weeks has been who is the Cincinnati Reds ace. I'm a big Nick Lodolo guy. A lot of guys out there, big fan of Hunter Green. The question that was thrown out on off the bench, I believe last week, that caught my attention. I can't remember who asked it, but one of the guys said, which who are you most excited for when they're on the mound? Is it Hunter Green or Nick Lodolo? And here's how I decide. Here's how I distinguish between the two. When Nick Lodolo is on the mound, I'm most confident. I'm more confident when Nick Lodolo is on the mound, but I'm more excited when Hunter Green's on the mound. There's something about Hunter Green. Hunter Green just has this aura to him. He just has this look to him, this appeal to him. He brings that, high heat. He brings it all. But he puts a lot of guys on base, and that always makes me nervous. So that's why I'm like, with Nick Lodolo, I'm more confident. Nick Lodolo has had the more consistent outings since arriving. I know his outing against the Red Sox this past weekend wasn't great, but as we found out, he was dealing with a blister. So he only could throw 1 or 2 pitches, and that was it. He couldn't throw any breaking balls or anything. So he's on the 10-day IL. Reds fans freaking out. Oh, man, here we go. Here we go. Nick Lodolo on the IL. I'm not worried about Nick Lodolo on the IL because it's a blister. All right. If it's any kind of shoulder strain, oblique strain, pec strain, calf strain, anything like that, I'm nervous. That's when I'm uncomfortable. But if it's just a blister can heal. I don't like the fact that Nick Lodolo is not available for maybe a start, maybe 2, who knows. But I'm not going to overreact to a blister being what puts a pitcher on the side. That's not ideal. But like I said, any kind of pull, any kind of strain, anything like that, soreness is usually a result of something else. A pull or anything like that makes me nervous. But with a blister, it's simply a blister. If that's all it is, I'm fine with that. I think the Reds can overcome that. Anything else, I'd be very, very weary. I'm not concerned about that, as that was announced earlier today. Hunter Green on the mound tonight. The Reds have one of the best 1-2 punches in baseball with the way these two have been playing. Again, not ideal that Nick Lodolo's out, but of all the injuries that you can have, a blister, I'm not freaking out about a blister as far as that's concerned.
Yeah, they got glue for that. I wasn't the biggest baseball player growing up as a kid, but I do know they have like glue for like blisters, and you know what I'm saying, you can shoot up certain things, but like you talked about like ligaments and pulls and stuff like that knocks you out for weeks at a time. A blister, you may miss a start and then you get right back at it. So yeah, a blister, throw some duct tape on there, a Band-Aid, some glue, you'll be all right.
So, these are the concerns that the Cincinnati Reds are having, and this is what they're kind of dealing with at this point. Look, Matt McClain, 60-day IL. The last update we had on Matt McClain goes all the way back to June 23rd, so just a couple days ago, right? Manager David Bell indicated this weekend that Matt McClain, who underwent shoulder surgery in late March, by the way, should be ready to start swinging a bat soon, according to Charlie Goldsmith of the Cincinnati Enquirer. He also reports that he's pretty close. When he starts swinging, there will be a step-by-step progression. This sounds like the Vikings coaching staff with the development of, or lack thereof, of the cheating quarterback, J.J. McCarthy. But yeah, step-by-step progression from dry swinging to tee work to soft toss, etc. It's a very well thought-out progression that he'll have to take his time with. To me, I'll be very surprised if we see Matt McClain at all this season. Now, again, it's kind of wild. The Reds are 2.5 games out of the wild card. I talked about this while you were gone, that what we have to be careful about is not confusing being mathematically in the playoff hunt and being a playoff quality team. You can't confuse the two. I don't think this is a playoff quality Reds team. I just don't. But they are mathematically in the playoff hunt. So what I'm concerned about is when you have a Matt McClain that could be 80-20 by the time we get to late August heading into September, the playoffs are around the corner. You're within a game or two, and it's like, do you try to be aggressive and put Matt McClain out there, and then you risk him re-aggravating it, and then he's injured heading into the offseason and having to start it all over again? Or do you just say, if we make it in, we make it in, great. We're not built to go on a playoff run, so there's no point risking an injury for Matt McClain late in the season. That's something that they're going to have to ask themselves as far as that's concerned. You know, Christian Encarnacion Strand, they transferred him to from the 10-day injured list to the 60-day IL, you know, just last week, back in mid-June, so that June 17th marker. TJ Friedel, I think someone just asked me about him. Where's it at? Sorry, John. I think it was John. Who asked me about that in the chat on YouTube. John, thank you. So the update that we have as far as that's concerned, TJ Friedel, who has just been on the IL, off the IL, on the IL, off the IL. Again, the hamstring issue, he should return from the 10-day injured list in 2 to 3 weeks. That's, 7, 14, 21 days, should return from the 10-day IL. He should return from the 10-day IL in 21 days. So there's that. But that's another report coming from Charlie Goldsmith of the Cincinnati Enquirer. The Reds have just been beat up all year. They're just beat up all year. 2.5 games out of a wild card spot. What do you think when you hear me say you can't let the fact that you're mathematically in the playoff hunt, you can't confuse that with being a quality playoff team? Because I don't think they're a quality playoff team. They are in the hunt, but rushing guys back from injuries doesn't just potentially derail this season. It could set next season in a tailspin as well for these late season injuries the further we get into the summer.
See what I said about the Bucks and Giannis and Dame when they got injured during the playoff run versus the Pacers. You can't afford for your two best players to pop an Achilles, knock on wood. You just can't afford that to happen because, okay, now you lost this season and then you've basically lost all of next season as well. And then shoot, when you're speaking about a player of Dame's age, you might have said his career could be over at that point. So that's why I was so stingent on saying, forget it, just shut it down because you're down 3-1. Just go ahead and get ready for next season. So yeah, I'm with you 100%. Like, you can't put everything into this season just for a chance to even just get in. It's a total difference between what KP did, what the Celtics, Porzingis did, where he was obviously battling injuries in the playoffs, or didn't even play in the playoffs. He only was able to play in 2.5 games in the NBA Finals. Like, okay, hey man, we're in the NBA Finals. We're not in the first round of the playoffs. Let's just say, for instance, that the Bucks would have played Giannis and they actually would have won. Like, they still would have had to go to second round and then the conference finals and then the championship round. That's a lot of basketball for the Porzingis situation. Hey, man, we're in the finals. This is it. This is the last series of the season. There's no more after this. There's a reason to push it. In the Red sense, you're not even in the playoffs yet. You're not even in the wild card yet. You're not even close there yet. Now, if things change and like, oh, man, the team gets hot and on fire and then they like take the lead, and then, hey, man, we really need you, then you give yourself a reason to push it. Right now, there's no reason to push it. You got to have your teammates and the others around you to give you a reason to go ahead and risk injury for next season.
Yeah, 2.5 games out of that wild card. That's that caveat, though. And that's what I'm concerned about. This is what happened last year, where I was concerned about the Cincinnati Reds veering off the game plan of they were supposed to be a 100-loss team last year. They ended up not being a 100-loss team last year. They ended up being mathematically in the playoff hunt. And, and to their credit, while everyone was pissed off that they did not make moves at the deadline, I said, to me, what that screamed is that, hey, we're sticking to the game plan here. Yes, we're mathematically in the playoff hunt, but we're also a team that we're riding the coattails of these first-year guys that we don't know what they're going to be long-term. I mean, You look at Jonathan India. Jonathan India's best year with the Cincinnati Reds was his rookie year. He's never returned to form. He's had nice little runs this season. He's showed spurts of it over the last couple of years, but outside of that rookie year, he's never returned to that. So while everyone's excited about the future of the Reds because of the great rookie year that we saw of Christian Encarnacion Strand and Matt McClain and Friedel and all these guys, how do you know that, that was just one great rookie year for rookie of the year at the time, Jonathan India, and he's just kind of flatlined a bit? What happens when you have an entire roster of guys that had great rookie years and then they flatline or regress? Now you've dug yourself in a hole because you've invested everywhere else thinking you don't need to invest there, and now you have a whole other batch of problems. So I'm not making excuse. The Reds front office, I wish, would be run differently, but I do believe that they are playing it smart by at least having their toe in the water and not diving into the deep end. I just hope that the deep end is not something they dive into come the trade deadline, where they go all in thinking that, well, we're mathematically in the hunt, but we're one of the worst defensive teams. We absolutely have no depth. You can't sit there and say that you're an injury away from your season derailing. That's not a thing in baseball. It shouldn't be. In the NBA, the Bucks are a Giannis away, and a Giannis injury away from the whole season going down the tank. The Lakers, LeBron or AD, their season's going down the tank. Who just won the championship? Why am I drawing a blank? The NBA, the Celtics. You know, Tatum or Brown goes out. That's it. That, like, the NBA, one star goes down, we get it. But in baseball, if you really are telling yourself, man, if Hunter Green goes down, we're screwed. If Ellie De La Cruz, because that's the thing. If Ellie De La Cruz goes out, they're done.
Right.
They're done. And if that to me, what that says is, yes, that's how special Ellie is, but that also says this team's not ready. Because in baseball, you shouldn't be talking about, man, if that guy goes down, look out. You look at your team. When Shane, not Justin Bieber, goes down in game one, after his first start of the season, you know, the Guardians, there wasn't a whole lot of expectations for them coming in. You know, they didn't make a lot of noise in the offseason. There wasn't a whole lot of off-season love for them as far as expectations goes. And then to start out the season hot, I think you started with 3-4-0, and then find out that you're losing your ace for the remainder of the season. And yet, here they are, one of the best teams, if not the best team in baseball, okay? That shows you the depth. That they didn't sit there and say, well, now without Bieber, we are definitely screwed. No, now, you know, they just next man up, and that's always been you guys with your damn pitching staff.
The crazy part about it, the pitching staff has not been great this season. The bully's been good, the closers have been good, but like the pitchings, the starters have not been good. Tristan McKenzie's actually been horrible this season.
So he would help, is what you're saying.
Yes, he would definitely help. But, you know, 50 games is 50 games. Shoot, I read something. If they play 500 baseball the rest of the way, they'll win like 94 games, which would be awesome. Hoping for more wins than that. But the trade deadline is July 30th. And I was having this conversation with a buddy of mine, like, okay, when is the button to push that say, yes, we're going for it? Because, I mean, right now, everybody's happy. Everybody's pumped up about the team, how well they're playing, lots of series sweeps and things of that nature going on. But, like, if and when they push the button to say, we think we can win this thing, we'll find out around the 25th.
They need a starter.
Yes.
They need a rotation guy.
I heard they're looking at
because they're putting runs out.
Trevor Bauer. They're looking at bringing him back.
Look,
but for somebody that hasn't pitched, it's been 3 years.
So he hasn't pitched in major leagues, but he's been dominating in Korea. He's been dominating all over the place. I mean, it's not just, there's a lot of pitchers that go over there and pitch well. He's just straight up dominating. Like, he's untouchable over there, and he's been untouchable for 2 straight years. I know that whole situation makes people uncomfortable. Look, he's one of those that he has no one to blame but himself for why he's not back. And I think it's because, if you remember, he felt he was untouchable. He was on top of the world. If you remember the comments he was making about Rob Manfred.
Yes.
He was just outright just trashing Rob Manfred. And, you know, as we've talked about in the past, like we talked about JJ Redick a little bit ago, if you're going to have that type of personality, you better have the talent to back it up. Now, he had the talent to back it up, but once he became vulnerable with his off the field stuff, now I know he was found, you know, not guilty on everything. Okay. Like, this is a little bit different than Deshaun. There was no payout here. In fact, the whole reason that this kept going is because he wouldn't pay her. He was like, no, I will give up my career to make sure I clear my name. And he did, but teams still won't touch him.
That's the crazy part. We hear this so much about, you know, famous people and actors and athletes and everything like that. And we, from the general public, say, like, well, if it was me, I would fight that until tooth and nail. He does it fighting until tooth and nail. And now he's out of a job in the major leagues.
And then you have Deshaun, who settled, not paid people off, however you want, but, you know, the people will word it however they want, settled because, you know what, there's just so many. I don't have time to fight to clear my name for all of these. And I would leave it at that. We don't know. We just don't know. Right. So if the mindset was, well, I don't have time to clear my name in all of these accusations, we just need to settle this. I'm in my 20s. My window to be an elite quarterback in the NFL is so small. Let's get this done. So you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. Because we're watching 2 guys that experienced similar accusations that handled it completely different. And yet one's in the league, one's not playing in Major League Baseball. One was completely found not guilty of everything. The other one settled. Trevor Bauer should be in the league, and I was an advocate for the Reds to get him in the offseason. For whatever reason, it's June, and people are less uncomfortable with what he was accused of now than what he was before, but nothing's changed. Absolutely nothing has changed since spring training to now. If the Guardians and him have a reunion, I would actually pull for him. I hope he does, because I think that stuff's dangerous when one accusation, and again, there's so many bad guys out there. Okay. So I'm not making excuses for them, but in a situation like this, where he was a villain because of his personality, it made it very hard to feel bad for him and pull for him. But at the end of the day, he was found not guilty. There was literally nothing to hold him against, and he served a 2-year suspension, basically.
Yeah. And he sued what? He sued the Athletic. He sued another, was it Deadline or
one of those, yeah,
one of them teams. Somebody out there big is reporting like he sued them too. So like it just goes to show, like, hey man, we in the general public can tell these athletes how to handle it. He handled it like the quote unquote average Joe would have if it was me type of vibe, and he got cleared, and he's still paying the punishment. Like not only the suspension where he lost years off his career, and now he's losing years off his career because he's kind of blackballed from playing. So
you're saying you're fine?
I'm good with it.
Trevor Bauer.
I'm good with it. I mean,
I think any team should line up.
I'm good with it. Like, I mean, shoot, like you talk about, is the juice worth the squeeze? I think so. I mean, it ain't like, oh man, he's about to be making money hand over fist. Like it'll be a situation where, like, hey man, a situation where you're comfortable. Like, all right, man, I've played for this organization before. I know the people, I know the town, I know the fans. Like, okay, I'm gonna give it a shot because I'm comfortable here, and I think I have a chance to win and be in a position of need as well. Like so many other teams don't necessarily need him. The Guardians need another big time pitcher.
And the difference between, because I've said I want the Reds to do it. The Reds are that team. They're 2.5 games out. Could that, that would definitely help. But the Reds, I saw a graphic the other day. I think they're number 3 in ERA over the last month, and they have a record under 500 in that stretch. Their problem is not pitching; it's their ability to score runs. They can't score runs. So getting Trevor Bauer, does that help? Yes, but he's not going to be the difference between them making the playoffs and missing. We're talking about a Guardians team that is a World Series contender at this point. He could be that. He could close that gap on what you lost with Bieber, as far as that's concerned. But yes, I'm fine with the return from Bauer, no doubt about it, even if it is to Kev Nash's Cleveland Guardians. Kinner and Cav, 1410 ESPN Radio here on a Tuesday.